So Robert F. Kennedy shocked the political world, not to mention members of his own family, saying on Friday that he's going to be actively campaigning for Donald Trump. So is this the momentum the Trump campaign needed? And what about the issues with RFK Jr.? Joining me now is Matt Taibbi of Racket News on Substack. Great to see you, Matt. Bobby Kennedy talked about the flack that he was getting even before he came out and endorsed Donald Trump from his family members and friends and others. I just want to play a soundbite of what he said. Again, this is before the announcement. This dates back to August 9th, and get your reaction. Roll tape.
If you went down the list of every issue that my father believed in, every issue that my uncle felt was a priority, that I would check off every single one of those. I don't think, I think I represent almost perfectly the Democratic Party of Robert Kennedy and John Kennedy. But I think the tribalism is so pronounced in our country, and this division, and people cannot see beyond the tribal identities. And I think it's really bad for our country that every issue and every person now has to choose a side. And if you're perceived as choosing the wrong side, then you're dead to them. And that is not healthy for our country.
Matt, what do you think? I happen to agree with him. I don't think it's healthy for our country. Do you?
No, I certainly don't think it's healthy. And I think he's speaking to frustrations that a lot of former Democrats feel, including myself. There are a lot of people who have noticed the pronounced change in the way the Democratic Party has operated since Donald Trump's election. There's a new attitude that if you're not completely down the line in favor of or supportive of the current administration, that you're an enemy. And they did this to everyone from Bernie Sanders to Tulsi Gabbard, who just endorsed Trump today, to RFK Jr., to the people from the Green Party, who historically lean Democratic and are no longer going to do that likely. This is a new thing. I mean, they did this the Nader once upon a time, but this is now expanding that attitude.
Well, and it actually, you can go before Nader. You go back to the 50s. I mean, it's McCarthyism. Unless you toe the line, you're a communist, period. And there were a lot of people that were caught in that movement, couldn't get a job for the rest of their lives. And government censorship plays right into this. And of course, that's one of the big issues that RFK Jr. has been parading for a couple of years now. Trying to outlaw one side of the debate plays right into this, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and he probably more than any other individual symbolizes the strategies and tendencies of the modern digital censorship movement. Obviously, I covered the Twitter files story.
Yep.
His name was all over Twitter's internal correspondence. He was a central figure in something called the Virality Project, that was run out of Stanford University. And it was a fascinating thing because they talked about him being the kind of repeat offender whose content was, quote, almost always reportable. In other words, they weren't looking at the content of his posts. They were judging him guilty before he even said anything, or that was the concept anyway. And this is, he has a right to be very upset about that. The current administration, within hours of taking office, was already sending out letters to Facebook about him. It's very serious, and he's right to raise the issue.
Now, the pandemic, of course, put the censorship issue in very, very clear focus, but it really precedes the pandemic, doesn't it? And it's going on now, long after the pandemic. So it's kind of a strategy of the left now. It's rather than just focusing on one issue.
Yeah, it's certainly been adopted, I would say, by the political left, or more accurately, like the Democratic Party or the Labour Party in Britain. They're really the leaders politically in these new forms of digital censorship. But the issue is almost immaterial. There's almost always an emergency that they focus on.
Right.
When we first started looking at the Twitter files, they were talking internally about terrorist attacks in Paris and The Hague being the reason for enhanced enforcement in Europe. Later on, it was Russiagate. That was what was causing the Senate to heavily pressure
And then
Twitter.
Climate change. Remember, there were congressmen that were calling for censorship on one side of it. I mean, you can view climate change from a number of different perspectives, but you don't want to stifle debate. But Congress people were actually demanding it.
Yeah, and this reflects a fundamental misunderstanding not only of the media, but of how the American legal structure is set up.
Yeah.
Obviously, the First Amendment is designed not to give people rights that flow from the government. It's designed to restrain government from interfering in speech.
Yes.
So this idea that we would now have this new kind of top-down digital censorship regime that decides what is and is not misinformation is a total anathema to how America is set up, and it's un-American.
Matt, very quickly, we run out of time, but I got to touch on this arrest of the CEO of Telegram, the messaging app in France. His name is Pavel Durov. He's Russian, but he left Russia an enemy of Putin back in, I think it was 2014. So he's not part of Putin in any way, but he has been arrested. The question very simply is this arrest an attack on free speech, or is it something else?
Absolutely. This is a paradigm shifting moment in the history of free expression in the West. The idea of using the European Digital Services Act and other laws like that to criminally penalize or detain people for failing to censor is a historic new crossing of a line, and it's only going to be the first of many such actions. And so we can expect more things like this.
Matt Taibbi, I'm glad you're on the case. Matt, thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.